My advice to people that want to be leaders growing up is to get good at communication. And you need to say the difficult things, but you need to say the difficult things with love. And if you're saying the difficult thing with love from your heart, that will come across. But the worst thing a leader can do is not communicate.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of A Higher Purpose, a Vanderbloemen podcast. I am your host, Brett Connolly, and joining me as she does every single episode, every week, she's back.
It's me, Sarah.
This is Sarah Gonzalez, my coworker, my co-host, my friend.
And your co-friend.
Here we go, co-friend. Feels good to be here. And we have a special guest for this
Very
episode.
special guest.
You probably already see her on YouTube if you're watching. If you're listening, you don't know who it is yet. But this is Jennifer Paulson, Vanderbloemen's COO.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. We like to pronounce it COO.
COO, also known as
We'll work on that. Yeah, we'll work on that. Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your day. Yeah. I know you get to spin a lot of plates. You're in the office. You get to... everyone knows you. Everyone celebrates you, hopefully.
Oh, thanks, Brett.
I feel like a COO can sometimes feel like a thankless job because you're putting out a lot of fires, you're doing a lot of things. But hopefully you do feel celebrated in the Vanderbloemen office because a lot of people see the hard work that you put in.
I would like to say, Brett, that you're exactly right, that in most companies, the COO is probably the most uncelebrated role. And just as a big shout out to the employees at Vanderbloemen, I have never felt like that, even for a minute. You guys do such a good job of celebrating me, encouraging me. It was my birthday a couple weeks ago, and you guys took good care of me. So thank you for making a usually under-celebrated role feel very celebrated.
Absolutely.
I always think COOs are similar to like referees or sometimes even elders, you know, where it's like they don't get talked about until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
The Book of Judges,
under-celebrated.
Deborah was a judge. Deborah was a female judge. I think you're exactly right. You have to figure out how to split the baby so that the least number of people are dissatisfied with that split.
That's one way to start off this podcast.
There it is. No,
I have the honor of being Jen's executive assistant, and so I get to do everyday life with her, and what you said is so true. You really are the backbone to what we do most days, and it's a blessing to get to have you. So thanks for coming and talking.
It's my pleasure, you guys.
I'm really excited because, so the whole purpose of this podcast is for us to learn about our purpose on earth, how to steward our life. And you have more experience in the workforce than Brett and I do. And so we're going to get to learn your stories today, which I'm really excited about.
I'm happy to spill the tea, as I learned this morning. That's an expression that means
Way
share
to
the
go.
goss with your young folks.
Share the goss.
That wasn't supposed to be a laugh line.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so
thriving.
good.
Well, no, I would love to just kind of give you a platform just to share a little bit about your story, how the Lord led you to Vanderbloemen, because it is such a unique role of getting to help the capital C church. So how did you get here?
Okay, I'll talk, and then when you guys think that I've gone on too long, please feel free to give me like a wink or a snap, and I'll stop. But I'll give you the longer version. Oh, brother gave me the wink.
Sorry.
So when I was growing up, initially when I was young, I thought I wanted to be a businesswoman, and I wanted to be a businesswoman because I wanted to wear beautiful suits to the office every day, and I wanted to travel internationally. This was when I was really young. Then when I went to Princeton for college, and I decided to major in religion because at that point I felt that God was calling me to the ministry myself. I grew up ELCA Lutheran, and I thought maybe I wanted to be a pastor. So I got my 4-year degree in religion, and then after that I followed it up with a master's degree in religious ethics from the University of Chicago. Wow. And at that point I thought, well, maybe a professor. And then, I don't know that you know this, Brett, I went to a Lutheran seminary for a year. And this is, you can always cut this part out if you want, Adriana, but I was not, the women at the seminary were not treated very well by the men at the seminary at this time when I was there. And this was 20, 25 years ago. So I decided that this probably wasn't where God wanted me to be for 2 reasons. One, because I wasn't necessarily respected by the males, but that's small potatoes. The other thing is that I didn't know if I could be selfless enough to be a pastor because... And still, even after working here at Vanderbloemen for 2.5 years, the people in the office who are ordained pastors, Brett, you being one of them, you just have to be very selfless. So I didn't think that I could be selfless at that age, and I thought maybe later in my life I'd go back to service in the church. So I never worked in the church, and I still to this day have not worked in the church.
Yeah.
So then I decided, well, if you were going to be a pastor and you decided not to be, what would be the logical thing to do in its place? And I came up with work retail in New York.
Classic switch up.
Logical.
Classic switcheroo. So then I started working for Lush Cosmetics, and I was an assistant manager at our store on Broadway and 76th Street. I was that role, so it was in New York. I was in that role for 2 weeks. Then I got promoted to be the manager.
Wow.
If we had more time, I'll tell you the interesting story of how that went down. It's a real laugh riot. And then I did that for about a year. Then I got promoted to being the manager of the highest volume store in the company, which was Herald Square, 34th and Broadway in New York. Then I got promoted to be the district manager. Then I got promoted to be the regional manager. Then I got promoted to be the national sales manager. And then at the end, for the last 5 years that I was there, I was running the North American retail operations business.
Wow.
So then, is this still good? Should I keep going, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're cooking.
Okay, so then I was in a really successful role that I loved, and I got to travel 3 weeks a month. I got to travel to glamorous places. I was in charge of the 250 retail stores we had at the time. I could pick my own schedule, and I felt God calling me to leave all this to start my own business.
Wow.
And I am a very risk-averse person. Most COOs are risk-averse. Most CEOs are pro-risk.
Yeah.
Most COOs are risk-averse.
Right.
It was a big deal for me to make this leap. I was scared every step of the way, and I did. I quit my job at Lush to start my own company. Then let's flash forward about 3.5 years, and that led me to. You're supposed to call me on that and say I couldn't fast forward for 3.5 years. You were supposed to say I'm supposed to talk about that.
You can't flash forward 3.5 years. You have to tell us everything.
Oh, great.
That's why
Yeah.
you're on the podcast.
Let's back it up.
Back it up.
Let's hear.
Tell it all.
So I decided at that point, after working at Lush for 10 years, I felt a new life calling. And the new life calling was to help young women achieve their dreams. So I had some difficult situations growing up, as we all do, and I wanted to use those situations for good. And having worked at Lush for 10 years, I worked a lot with really young girls, mostly girls, some men, but mostly the people that I've worked with were women between the ages of 18 and 24, 25. And I really loved that group of people, and I really thought that there was a lot that I had gone through that I could use to help. So I wanted to start my own retreat center for young women, but I didn't have $2 million to do that with. So I thought, let me start this other company to try to raise enough money for that retreat center. And sometimes I think back and I think, if God gives you that specific dream, do you have to logically figure out another way to achieve that dream? Interesting to think about. Like, what if I had just said, this is what I want to do, God, help me to achieve that? But I'm like, let me help God out. Let me try to start my own sports bra company. Let me try to earn enough money doing that so that I could afford to start this retreat center for young women. So I struggled and then struggled a little bit more for about 3.5 years with this sports bra company. And it was more bad than good. There were a couple of good experiences, but in general, it was an unpleasant, scary experience. And I was scared every day because I didn't have income coming in. It was just really scary. And I wanted to do it by myself because I didn't want to take money from other people. So people said, oh, I'll invest in this. I said, no, I'm going to do it on my own. If God wants to make it work, he'll make it work. It's kind of like that story about the person stuck on the roof, Brett.
Yeah.
Where
waiting for the boat.
Waiting for the boat. God sends a ladder. God sends all these other things. And then the person dies and goes to heaven. And God said, what about the ladder, the boat, the parachute?
Send it all.
Yeah.
All that. But I'm like, no, God, if you want this to work, it'll work by
Then
me
I'll
doing
do it by myself.
Yeah. So eventually, after 3.5 years, I ran out of money. I had saved up $200,000 from my time at Lush just to do this with. At the end of 3.5 years, I had zero. I had $0. I had to move back in with my mom. I had nothing to show for it.
Wow.
The idea was really great, but I just I was too scared to make it work. So I sold it, but I sold it for a very small amount of money to a person in New York who wanted to take it and do something with it that I couldn't. And then at that point, I didn't have any income. I had good experience, but I was in a really scary spot.
Yeah.
And I consulted for a little bit, did that. But when I was looking for a job, so consulted, and then I was like, I need another job. I'd never heard of Vanderbloemen before. Don't tell William. But I'd never heard of Vanderbloemen. I looked on LinkedIn, and I'm very thorough. Sarah, you know that about me. I'm very thorough. So I typed in, the roles, and I looked through every single one of them. And I applied, even if I'd never heard of the company.
Wow.
So I applied to Vanderbloemen, and within 22 hours, maybe, I got an email from a very talented, very good-looking man named Brett Conley.
Wow.
And Brett emailed me and said, our owner would like to set up a call with you.
Wow.
And I had never heard
I did not know that.
Yeah, Brett was my first interaction.
That's awesome.
And it's at this point, I still didn't know anything about the company. But then I researched a ton, and I think this also William doesn't know, but I was living in Wisconsin at the time, which is why my license plate still says Wisconsin. I'm not trying to avoid Texas license plate taxes. That's why my license plate says Wisconsin. I was living in Wisconsin, and I flew down here to meet with William.
Oh.
And then after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more meetings with William, I got hired.
Wow.
So you're flying back and forth and back and forth?
Yep. Uh-huh. And I don't think he ever knew that was how it went down. But I was very committed to it. And after meeting William for the first time and looking at all of the stuff on the website, like Vanderbloemen is where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And then just to put a bow on this story, you guys, what my best memories of the past 2.5 years are the young women at Vanderbloemen that I have been able to pour into. Yeah. Sarah Gonzalez being one of them, Krista being another one of them, Adriana and Kaylee. There's Sarah Meggers. Yeah. Yvette. There's just so many women.
Now there's pressure. You have to name everyone.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because someone's going to get their feelings hurt.
They know who they are.
Kristen Fry.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, it ended up, God got me to where I was supposed to be, and I couldn't have done any of it myself. But all the things that I learned through this process made it just, I should have trusted God more from the beginning, and that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have taken the leap of faith if you didn't have those 3.5 years of trying? Like, would you have gone from Lush to Vanderbloemen, or did you need that 3 years of like stretching?
I was talking to Sarah about this at lunch. I think that if I had to go back and do my life over, I would not have taken the leap of faith, Brett. I would have stayed at Lush, and my life would be so different. But God closes some doors or helps us close the doors on purpose, and if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here. Nope.
Yeah.
I'd probably be in some glamorous, more highly paid job in Cancun.
But you wouldn't have touched the lives that you touched here.
Well, that's
and
true.
that's
Now the
really
kingdom
important.
works.
Brett and I were talking about in another podcast that we did. We were talking about those boundaries in life and the thing that you were talking about, doing it all on your own. And that's the huge reason for burnout. Is the feeling of striving and the feeling of we can and the feeling of not going back and partnering with the Lord. And you learned that all throughout your life. We've learned that. And then it's really, honestly, I know that failure is not always fun, but it also is very encouraging to hear what the Lord's done through the feelings of frustration and fear. And you saying, I would go back and I would do that differently. So what you kind of mentioned it, but what's your token of advice for somebody, you know, that's in the feeling of fear? How would you tell them to partner with God in taking that step of faith?
So I know the right answer here. The right answer is that you were supposed to take the leap of faith every time, and that you were just supposed to trust that God will get you through. I know that's the right answer. So I give you that answer, and then I give you a slightly different answer. I think that it's important to talk to people who know you really well when you're making decisions. And I also think it's important before you start something new to talk to people who've been there before you. So, for example, Sarah and I have a friend who's thinking of starting a bakery. And I'm able to then help that person because of what I've learned. And when I tried to start my own business, I didn't want to bother people asking for advice. But what I should have done is ask for advice. Because if someone had said to me, Jen, you can be successful in this, but you're going to not be able to do it by yourself.
Right.
You're going to need a whole team of people around you. Then I could have prepared better. Right. So yes, God uses everything, but I would just say try to get as much information as you can, and then trust God, because I know I'm supposed to be here. And it's a matter of trust. It's not like trust but verify, but it's almost like trust but also do your research.
Yeah. That's good.
Long-winded answer. I'll try to answer them shorter.
No, I like it.
No, that was really good.
17.
Blue.
Perfect. Well, that's the end of the podcast.
Thanks so much for
joining.
Hoggy Hog.
No, well, you've been in a number of different roles. A lot of that is just quick trajectory and your skill sets and things of that nature. But you know, as you look at your career and you think of like where you started, what you know now, right? Like, I watch middle school basketball and I go, if I could just be a middle school basketball player now, I would dunk on all these schools, right? But like you look back at people starting their careers and you're like, man, I wish I could help them here. I wish, and sometimes we get to do that with the work that we do. But what's like one or two things that you go, if I could do this over again, I wish I would do more of this, or I wish I would do less of this.
That's a great question. One of my favorite expressions is life is lived forward but understood backward.
That's right.
So, you know, it's like you being the middle school. Like right now, you'd kill it. You'd kill it out there.
That's right.
You just dunk all those. You just dunk on all
Missed
of them.
opportunity.
Missed opportunity. But one thing that I would say I wish I had done more of, and what has helped me the most, like I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to say, if I were in your shoes, if I were a young person just starting out my career, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is develop emotional intelligence. The reason that I am where I am, other than the grace of God, is because I feel like something that I'm good at, that God's given me the ability to be good at, through having gone through difficult times in my life, is I can understand where everyone is coming from.
Yeah.
I could tell you what Raina's thinking right now. I could tell you what Sarah's thinking right now. Brett,
Yeah, bet.
But,
Bet.
but I think emotional intelligence is really the key. I know William always talks about AI and how AI is taking a lot of people's jobs. And we've got the unicorn book, Be the Unicorn. It really comes down to emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
If you can understand why people are doing what they're doing, what motivates them, what doesn't motivate them, you can develop the people below you to make your job pretty easy.
Yeah.
Another piece of advice is people work harder for someone that they know cares about them. You know I care about Isaac and Mackie. You know I care about Nick and your mom. Because of that, you guys will work harder for the company because you feel valued by the leader.
Yeah.
So I would say if you can learn to understand people,
Yeah.
learn to actually, I mean, it's not even learn, but you need to actually care about people to be a successful leader, because people can see right through that.
Yeah.
We all have worked with leaders that we know don't really care about us.
Right.
And yeah, you can do the job, but you're not going to give it your best, nor are you going to enjoy coming into work each day.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And some of the people that I like, even when I was starting working and even working as like a student worker at DBU, and you have this skill that I was like, I want that, is where they have the opportunity and the ability to kind of flip between like personal to like, okay, now we need to get work done.
That's
Because it
great,
can't all
Brett.
just be personal and hey,
Brett, that is good.
But we have to have a vision and agenda, and we have to get stuff done.
Right.
But the ability to balance those two things goes to that emotional intelligence. Like, hey,
Right.
when do I need to put on the
Yes.
personal hat?
Yeah.
But also, like, if I need to wear this too long, maybe you need to work on your emotional intelligence. You need to leave that at your door.
That was
you know?
really
This,
good.
please frame that embroidered on a pillow. That should be needle pointed on a pillow. Our pillows next week will have Brett's quote. Brett, that's absolutely brilliant. And I think if you have the emotional buy-in from your employees, they will be fine with that code switch. Sarah
Right.
comes into my office, I make a funny joke, and then I say, "You did this wrong."
Yeah.
And she's completely fine with it because she knows that I care about her.
Yeah.
So I think the emotional intelligence plays into that. You need to be able to code switch quickly
Right.
as a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
as a
That's
disclaimer, that was
good.
just an example because Sarah has never done anything wrong.
That's for sure.
That's what I've
That's for
heard.
sure.
Besides
Actually,
the jeans.
besides my ripped jeans, yeah.
Oh.
Anyways, I was gonna say that's been the biggest thing I think I've learned watching you, and I've had the privilege of working with you for 6 months, is the balance of even when I'm being corrected, it's truly out of a good place of you want me to learn, you want me to grow. And what would be way worse is if you did not communicate those frustrations, and then every day I just feel like I'm running into a wall because I can't do anything right because I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So it also benefits me, it benefits you, but a huge piece of me being able to say, okay, I can work on that, I can do that, is the buy-in from you. I'm not a cog in a machine, I'm a human, and I walk in here and I know that at the end of the day, if I'm having a really hard day, you're going to ask me if I'm okay. Like, you'll see it on me. It is that emotional intelligence. How would you advise people if they feel like that's something they need to grow in? What's ways to grow into that? How do they learn?
Well, if I
that
could
skill?
answer that, I would be a bazillionaire, and I
millionaire.
would have written a book about it. Let's think about it, though. I bet there's some easy things. Okay, I think one thing a person could do is start trying to see things from another person's point of view.
Okay.
So maybe try this for a week. I can't promise that it'll work, but I think it might. And every time you like if Brett, let's say I'm interacting with you, think, okay, Brett had a big trauma last week. He lost power for a week. He has a 2-year-old son. He's got a wife. He was trying to do a presentation. He had to do a
This is a true story.
presentation
This is a true
from
story.
a ping pong table because he was resourceful about it. But when I'm talking to Brett, I'm thinking about what Brett went through. So then I can say, Brett, tell me about how that made you feel, or how did you guys get food for Isaac during that time? So seeing things from another person's point of view and maybe talking in terms that the other person will understand more.
Yeah.
We've all had bosses that just say what they want to say and kind of talk down to you. But if one example might be learn where the other person is coming from and then try to see things from their perspective.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think we're taught so much to be thinking of how we can grow and our trajectory.
Yeah.
That, half of emotional intelligence, and the title is emotion and emotional, right? And so, 80-something% of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah.
So I think
Yes,
just
Brett.
Yeah.
instead of just thinking of what is the next thing I'm gonna say, actually spending time of listening
Yeah, waiting.
and paying attention to how people are sitting, how
Yeah.
eye contact. When I'm doing a bunch of Zoom interviews for our work, as we're interviewing pastors and directors and all kinds of positions, those little things matter. Like as soon as they pop on the screen, you're like, oh, they didn't pay attention to their lighting at all.
Yes.
Or like the angle's off. Like you get an impression immediately. But the same is true of like when we're interacting with people in the office and on a day-to-day basis, you can immediately tell like, oh man, they're having a tough day.
Yeah.
Do I need to let it go, or do we check in on them?
Do you
or
press into that?
And it just depends on the person because you lean into emotional intelligence. Because some people want it, and some people need time.
Let me say one more thing. This is to answer the question you asked a few minutes ago about pieces of advice. Sure. When it comes down to tying the emotional intelligence. So, piece of advice: get strong in emotional intelligence. But I think communication. Because you were just talking about how a lot of communication really is nonverbal.
Yeah.
My advice to people that want to be leaders growing up is to get good at communication. And you need to say the difficult things, but you need to say the difficult things with love. And if you're saying the difficult thing with love from your heart, that will come across.
Yeah.
But the worst thing a leader can do is not communicate.
Yeah.
The marketing team at our company has been going through a lot of transition. And one thing that I think has made it so that our team is still here and feeling stable is that we're trying to communicate information as we learn it, as it comes in, and then communicate it in a way that is going to be supportive.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just top down.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime that I've been in leadership positions and I have to course correct someone, you kind of have to lay the hammer, but I always try and like pick someone up.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah,
You know, you don't just leave the hammer and go, see you later, good luck. But it's like, do you see why I'm having to have this conversation? You see why this is affecting other people?
Right.
You know, like this isn't the end of your story here.
Yeah.
It might be, but oftentimes it's like a course correct. Hey, let's move forward together.
You're just assimilating all these great ideas. Have you guys ever heard of, I don't know if it came from a book, but it's a quote, the gift of goodbye. Have you ever heard of that expression? So the gift of goodbye is something that I've also learned over my time managing, which is that sometimes you have communicated and you have tried to course correct and the person's just not in the right role. And it doesn't even necessarily mean they're doing the wrong thing. But the gift of goodbye is letting them go so that they can live out what God actually has for them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are afraid of making change.
Yeah.
And so as a manager, you sometimes have to help them make that change, which ends up being so much better for them in the long run.
Right.
And that's called the gift of goodbye, which is also hard.
That's good. That's good. I want to ask another question too. So as a COO, I tell Jen this all the time. I'm like, I wish that you had a Jen because you take care of all the other people around you. So when you get higher up in leadership, I'm sure a lot of people listening to the podcast, that's their goal, is to get in a company like you did at Lush and continue to move and grow in leadership. What are ways that you take care of you? What are ways that you help with your personal life?
Yeah.
You're involved in your community, you're involved in your church, you're involved with family. So what does that look like for you while your workplace is probably not the place you get poured into? Whereas for us, we have leadership above us that really pours into us. So we do get pieces of that here. Where do you get poured into? What's your advice to people that want to be in that role?
I love talking about this stuff. So I found a chart. I'm very organized, I like charts. I found a chart maybe 10 years ago, and it had, let's say, like physical life, social life, family life, business life, spiritual life, that type of thing. And you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those areas. Okay. And if one of them is doing a lot worse or a lot better, the goal is to have it be all even. So if you're giving a lot at work, you have to have higher in some of the other areas to fill you up. So for me, I'm in the Houston Symphony Chorus, and that is how we're doing a concert this week, and that is how I get filled up. Also, I've always made time to exercise, and I know a lot of you guys have a lot of things and you can't do it. But you need to make time to work out. You really need to make time to exercise. Yeah. Meditation has become a big thing to me. And then I was telling you this morning, Sarah, that I used to do my evening prayers in the evening, but then someone told me it's better to start out your day. So I do a half an hour in the morning reading the Bible, doing my devotion, and then I feel like that fills me up. Yeah. When I come home at the end of the day from work, am I completely drained and mad and exhausted and wondering why I'm here? Yes. yes, nearly every single day. But then I go do something for myself, do some self-care thing, and the next day I wake up, fill myself back up again so that I can be able to manage.
And pour out.
And pour
again.
Out. And pour out.
Over and over.
I'm not going to underestimate chocolate, but I try not to overestimate chocolate either.
That's really good. Well, hey, I was, as listeners, if you're listening, you can tell, like, you're really developed as a public speaker, you feel comfortable with presentations and stuff. But I'm sure that hasn't always been the case. You know, I mean, I heard that you started as a figure skater. What was it for the Badger State Winter Games? Could you tell me about your figure skating experience?
How?
Could you tell me about that, please?
Brett is a very good researcher, so.
Oh my gosh, I think this is going to make future guests scared to be on your podcast because Brett will find the most traumatic event of your childhood and bring it back to you. I appreciate that. This is one of them. It's on the list. Thank goodness Adriana gave me that Kleenex a few minutes ago. Oh. So I was a competitive figure skater. Competitive as in I did competitions.
Did you do this?
Yeah, I was. I love figure skating.
I did not know that.
I loved it. I was a competitive figure skater. Randy, you doing okay over there? I was a competitive figure skater 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, so 3 years. From the great state of Wisconsin, go Badgers.
Okay.
Go Badgers.
So we have a figure skating competition every year called Badger State Games. Mm-hmm. And one particular year I didn't do so hot. Is that a good enough answer?
Oh my gosh, for real?
Great.
Shocking.
Oh my gosh, Brett, you want to hear the story?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's okay.
I should tell it's funny.
No, is it funny?
It is.
Are you going to cry?
Yeah, but it's all in growth. I need to tell you it.
Okay, if you're listening on a podcast, you should switch to YouTube.
So you can see Jen's face.
There's going to be some tears. We can move forward.
So I don't know if you don't know figure skating terminology, I don't know if the story will be as impactful. Are you familiar with?
I watched Blades of Glory with Will Ferrell.
That qualifies
and,
you. Literally, that's all
Napoleon
you need to know.
Dynamite. Okay, good.
Okay, good.
Okay. So I had. I don't have a good memory. I just don't. It's just not. I mean, God has given me with a lot of gifts. I just don't. So I trained for a year for this figure skating competition.
Wow.
And it's the music, and then it's your routine. Like everyone's seen people perform.
Yeah.
I got out on the ice at Badger State Games, and my mind went blank. I lost the whole routine, you guys.
Oh, no.
All I did was skate in circles and did waltz jumps.
Oh my
Waltz
gosh,
jumps is the easiest jump.
I do that at the Galleria.
I can see you do that at the Galleria. My mind went blank. I did waltz jumps for 3.5 minutes, and then I walked off the stage, and my coach was like, Jen, what happened? And I just broke down.
Wow. And look at you now.
And now I'm a competitive figure skater, and everything's good.
But look at how put together you are, how agile you are, how prepared you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good honestly, I think that's a good story, truly, a piece of encouragement for people who are starting their careers. Maybe they think it's going to be something else.
Right.
They're wrestling with it, and they're going, man, this isn't how I thought it was going to go.
Right.
But that's not even a blip on your radar anymore.
It really
not
isn't.
even. But then it was really important.
It was life or death then.
That's
take
horrific.
a step back, you go, holy cow, God's done so much more in my life than this.
You know what, guys? That's really great. And I'm going to add to that, Brett, what you said is really great, and this will be a little less great, but also still good. I feel like a person has to pick. You have to realize what you are good at and what you aren't good at.
Right.
That's true.
And it was and I actually stopped figure skating after that. It's not a sob story like, oh, Jen had it was just like, that might not be my strength.
Yeah.
And now I actually am a really good presenter, and I sing in front of people and I speak in front of people. But skating to something memorized, maybe that's not my jam.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's okay.
And
you got to find what you're good at and then walk in
Can
that.
I tell you the positive of that story was that my outfit was real cute.
That changes a lot. It fixes everything.
Yeah. And one more final thing, you can cut this out too. So there were 10 people competing, and each judge has to then give you an ordinal. So each of the 4 judges has to write what position they think. So they watch the 10 skaters, and they're like, okay, this person should get first, this person, and then they average it all, right?
Okay.
1 out of 10. 10, meaning they thought I was the worst, right? They thought I was the worst out of 10. 10.
Did you get 11?
3.
Oh.
Okay.
And my dad was like, this one person thought you were third best.
It was the outfit for sure.
I mean,
and that's a life lesson as well. You never know. Maybe some people's cup of tea.
That's true too. You could be some people's cup of tea.
Yeah.
We've got at least another half an hour, right? I want to keep going. I love it.
But I do think there's a piece to it of actively seeking out. Like being willing to. You say you're risk averse.
That's true. Yeah.
But I'm hearing this. I'm also hearing I'm starting my own company for 3 years, and income was tight.
Yeah.
It's like, so you are, when you feel a passion to test that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as I've talked with a lot of young candidates or even old students and stuff, they're talking about careers. They're so nervous about even cracking that door open. I'm like, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to, or you'll just never know. or you're going to stay working
Right.
where you're working, or frustrated the way you
Right.
are frustrated.
Right. Which is not great for the employer either.
No.
No. I have two things to say on that. One is if you keep doing what you're getting, you'll keep getting what you're getting. So you need to try new things if you're not happy where you are. And the other one was so important. Brett, say what you said at the beginning. What were you talking about? Taking chances.
To higher
no,
purpose.
Brett, no.
Oh.
Taking chances when you taking advantage of. Oh, okay. Here it is. This is another piece of really great advice, if I do say so myself. You need to have time and stillness to hear from the Lord. If you are just going from one thing to another thing to another thing, and you are constantly busy, you are blocking you are clogging God's phone line to you.
Yeah.
So the people that are afraid to move out in faith, my advice to those people are literally lay on the floor, go in the grass and lay there and say, God, what do you want me to know?
Yeah.
And you might not hear it like clearly, like, Brett, probably time for you to leave Vanderbloemen, maybe you want to move to Peru. You might not hear that, but you will.
Peru. Wow, that's okay.
But you will feel something,
right?
And if God wants you to do it, you will feel that nudge, or something will happen that will be like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that. So time and space to hear from the Lord.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that
this morning.
This morning on another episode, and I would tell students all the time, there's a huge difference between activity and productivity.
That's good.
Yeah.
Those aren't always synonymous.
How about this one? We're called to be human beings, not human doings.
Wow. It's true. I mean, the Bible literally says, be still and know that I am God. So, like, that's obviously very important, to be still and listen to him. And I think a lot of times in society, we're used to just go. Brett was talking about, in ministry, he filled up, like, his whole calendar every night he did something, and that was when he was new in the workforce. But I think we still, when you change your title or you move up or you change companies, no matter what age you are, there's still that desire to feel like you need to prove or move up or do, and that's always usually what ends up being when you are striving on your own.
Something that's interesting. Sorry, Brett, I think you were going to ask. I do interview a lot of people. I interview a lot of people to work here for a lot of different positions.
Yeah.
And something that I've noticed over all the people that I'm interviewing, the people that are closest to the Lord, when I say, what do you want to be doing in 10 years? They always say, I don't know, wherever God leads me. But in business, when I interviewed people, they were always like, okay, I want to have a townhouse on 14th Street, like that. But I think that as a Christian, that is what we should say. We should say, in 10 years, we will be where God wants us to be.
Right. Yeah.
And when you were at Lush, New York City, very busy, I also heard that maybe you were having maybe products stolen, but you didn't necessarily have the funds or the means to like track that down or replicate the stolen funds, but you did something creative, right? Could you tell us a little bit about because sometimes you have the solution if you had everything available to you,
right?
And then you have to be solution side living, which is one of Vanderbloemen's core values.
So I'm really glad that you and my sister have become such good friends, Brett. I really hope that partnership continues. I thought she was going to tell you about the time that I was held up at gunpoint in my New York store.
Oh.
And when I was in 76th and Broadway, held up at gunpoint, which would have been more interesting. But the story that you were referring to, I'm sure, is that at
the other one.
34th and Broadway, we had a lot of theft. And this, I mean, I can tell you the dramatic part of it or just the factual part of it. I'll tell you the dramatic. You can always cut it out. I had a girl working for me whose boyfriend was a gang member and a gang leader. And she was the one stealing the products. I darn well knew it. And he came and he knifed our glass things and then said, if you fire my girlfriend, I'll kill you.
To you?
Yeah, to me.
Jen.
This is why you should never let your children live in New York. So we got a camera. There was a fake camera, Brett, and we put it in the middle of the store, just on the ceiling, and the theft immediately stopped because it was the employees doing the theft, and they thought that I had put up a camera that would have caught them. So you just put up a fake camera, and then all of a sudden the theft stops.
But that's brilliant.
That is a life lesson. Yeah.
Wow, that really was interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's really good.
We got to say something. Talk about something that's like actually going to help these people.
We've been talking a lot.
Yeah, you've said a lot that are going to help them for sure.
You've been saying good stuff.
100%.
But you were saying how even at Lush, one of your passions was helping young people starting in their career.
Yeah.
Vanderbloemen does have a number of young individuals, maybe in their second full-time position or third
Yeah.
full-time position
Yep.
that you're getting to work with on a daily basis. How do you think leadership has changed? I mean, you have COVID.
That's a good question.
I feel like we're still, whether we like it or not, there's still a ripple effect from that.
I completely agree, and I think it's changed a lot. I think that there's a difference in how you manage people from different generations. William recommended a book. I think it was called literally Generations. Maybe it's a new book that's out about how to manage different generations. When I was first starting out, it was really just you did what you were told. I'm 46. It's not like I'm 70,000 years old, but you basically did what you were told. And I think that if we talk to our parents, they would think that too. You know, it wasn't about building your relationships at all. It was just about, these are the tasks that I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do them and get paid.
Yeah, you do your job.
And now I think that young people thrive on relationships. And so I think that management now has to be relationship based. And that's what's going to motivate the people to continue to do their job well. So I think the biggest change is from task orientedness to relationship orientedness. But then that's when it becomes more important to do that boundary where, yeah, we can talk about our personal lives a little bit to make sure the relationship is there, but then we got to be able to flip back over into boss.
Yeah, that's
Into
good.
boss.
All right. Well, Jen, thank you so much
Oh,
for
my
coming on the
pleasure.
podcast. We appreciate you. And I'm sure everybody listening today and watching today got to learn something new.
Well, thanks. I'd be happy to come back anytime because this was just a fraction of the nuggets that I have in my
You
head.
are
I
right
thought-
down
I
the
thought this
hallway,
was
so
really
we'll
good.
give you a
Yeah,
call.
thanks.
We'll give you a call.
We'll knock on your door.
So I got a guy. I'll reach back out
You have somebody on the
sometime.
inside.
And you guys are doing a great job. You really are the right people for this role.
Thanks, Jen.
You're super charismatic. You're super fun to listen to. So we're lucky to have you guys.
Thanks,
I
Jen.
appreciate it.
Regardless of your spider microphones.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Don't
you.
reach out to us. We'll reach out to you. Okay, Jen?
Well, you know, if I knew who signed your checks, I'm going to have a conversation with them. Thanks, you guys. That's good.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for listening to A Higher Purpose of Vanderbloemen podcast. If you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can go to vanderbloemen.com/podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe, or any other platforms such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on all of our social medias. We're on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.